Right, time for a big question. So if you live somewhere where the weather's changing for the worse right now, you're probably thinking about getting your bike ready for winter. So since we've got mechanic Nick with us, we thought we'd ask him what 5 things he does to his bike every winter so he is primed and ready to get out there and keep riding bikes.
Well, obviously this is for up here where the weather's bad and probably a lot of other countries as well. Yeah. First thing that's most important is service your bike. If you can only service your bike once a year, I would suggest doing it right before winter starts so that everything is greased and as waterproof as possible. Your number one thing that's going to get you on a bike is corrosion. So corrosion to bottom bracket bearings, headset bearings, wheel bearings. Bearings is probably the main thing. Then your chain, brake pads, things like that. It's just going to get hammered, especially with the salt on the roads they've got up here and in most countries where it freezes overnight.
I was just about to say, on the subject of grease, something I find really, really annoying about social media and just marketing to bikes in general is this spinning the crank thing. So there's this idea that you put a ceramic bearings in your bike, you spin the cranks around, they spin for ages, but it's ultimately, if it's not greased, it's going to spin. Like I used to WD-40 all of my bearings because I thought it was faster. And it just rolls for ages, but that doesn't actually mean it's a good thing. So like grease is important.
But well, the other thing with that is obviously not to bore you with it, but those cranksets are spin so fast in some of them bearings. Ceramic speed is a good example for it. If you take a ceramic speed bearing, lift it up to a light, you can see through the seals. The seals don't touch. So essentially water is just going to get in and then it's going to corrode. So grease, yes. For winter, if you live in a bad, like, yes, it's when it says slow you down, it's going to slow you down in less than a watt that you're going to lose. Put waterproof grease in. There's different greases also, not just all grease works, but as a minimum, just get your bike serviced.
I was going to say, if you are getting your bike serviced, a mechanic is going to presumably
most of the time, yes. Yeah, presumably use a good grease. That I would say is the main thing. If you can, opt for stainless steel bearings. Just because anything stainless steel, anything that's corrosion resistant, don't fall for ceramics because if the outside of the bearing isn't corrosion resistant, then that's not going to help. So just keep the rust out. Second thing is, which I don't do properly, is fit mud guards. I use the Ass Saver Wind Wing because it keeps me dry, but doesn't keep anybody else dry. I think most cycling clubs and most of the people who ride with you would prefer if you go for full mud guards. Something I really don't like.
But I guess not all bikes are going to fit full mud guards, are they?
No, but yes. I mean, they've got their pros and cons. All I'd say is if you do fit full mud guards, make sure you wash your bike properly after ride. So that's the next thing. Wash your bike. Washing your bike is probably the most underrated thing you could do in the winter. If you wash it after every single ride, clean it, you are just going to prolong the life of everything. Obviously, there's a caveat to this. Don't be pressure washing all the grease out of all your bearings and head to the bottom bracket again. So just use a bucket, a sponge, hot water, some soap, clean your bike.
We have a 5-minute bike clean video, I think, that Francis and myself made maybe last summer or something or other. So if you want to know how to clean your bike really quickly, watch that video.
Don't use the soap from your dishes like you guys do. But
I have had 0 issues in 15 years.
I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one.
So yes, another one that I'm really...
Sorry, is drying your bike also important?
Yes, if you don't store your bike wet in your outdoor shed, that's just going to be cold. I mean, the bike has to dry off. Essentially, it all comes back down again to you want to stop corrosion, stop rust, make sure the bike doesn't rust. Yes, drying definitely helps a lot. If you can store your bike indoors, inside your house, that's even better. I know there's a lot of partners of people listening to the show who's not going to like the idea, but it'll save you a lot of money.
I would say I clean my bike much more in winter than I do summer. In summer, I basically don't clean it at all. And then in winter, but I don't even clean it properly in winter. Just hose it down and then dry it is usually what I do.
Yes. Summer obviously is not going to get as dirty and mucky and you can get away longer without it. You don't want to over clean a bike, but in winter, just clean your bike quite regularly. Another one that's quite interesting is wax, chain wax. It doesn't work in the winter. So I know loads of people are going to get upset about this, but it doesn't work in the wet. So if you are waxing in the summer for those speed gains and things like that in the winter, I suggest switch back to oil.
How does it not work? Because it surely...
So everybody talks about immersion wax and all these things and how long it lasts in miles, but they all say it based on conditions. So if it gets wet, it just wears off your chain much quicker. But also doesn't, if you do chain waxing properly, you have to degrease and decontaminate your entire drivetrain to wax your chain, to get all the efficiency out of it and to get the wax to stick. But that means your cassette, your pulley wheels, half your derailleur, everything else doesn't have a coating of oil or protection from corrosion on it. So it will just rust.
Presumably, if you're using chain lube, though, you're having to reapply it quite often if it's bad conditions. But
After every wash, yeah.
It's a lot easier to do that than it would be to...
Wax the chain, yeah. But also, it'll stop everything else on your bike from corroding. So that's a big tip. Next one would be suitable tires. One of those, everybody likes race tires because they're faster. Tires gives you probably the most speed on a bike. But in winter, the last thing you want to do is fixing a puncture next to the road when you've got cold hands and freezing. So I would say opt for something that's arguably slightly less comfortable, not as fast, but has a bit more puncture resistance and more grip. Make sure there's a big thing to look into as well. Rubber generally below 5 degrees Celsius hardens up. So they actually become less safe. That's why cars, you get winter tires. When you buy bike tires for the winter, just make sure you buy a tire that's actually rated to work in cold.
Do you have any
temperatures as well.
recommendations on anything like that?
I personally really like Michelin. Vittoria does a ride armor that's really good. But obviously it's difficult. I'm not the best person for this because our shop deals with more premium brands and tires. Speak to your local bike shop. They can give you advice on that. I would also run bigger tires because the biggest tire your frame set can take, you're going to get more, you can run low pressures, which can give you extra grip.
I would say in that section, if you are going to get a pump in winter, a frame pump is so much better than one of those little tiny ones,
things,
or even gas, because gas can be fiddly. If you got a frame pump, you just chuck it on, bosh, 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 you're on the road again. And there are tons of cheap options. The Topeak, is it pronounced Topeak?
Topeak, yeah.
They have a frame pump that used to cost £15. I don't know how much it costs now. It's probably not that much more than that. It's so good. It just works.
They do a thing called a mini morph as well, which I used to use back in the day when I was riding on the road quite a lot. And it's almost like a mini foot pump that goes onto your bike. So it's got a little foot adapter that you can stand on. And it's just, what you want to do is minimize the amount of time you're spending in the cold trying to fix a puncture.
Have you used the studded tires? I've always wanted to try studded tires. I think you've got a set in the shop now,
I bought a
haven't
set
you?
last year because it's difficult to get tubeless ones for gravel that could fit into my bike. And I got a set, but then it never got icy enough.
What
for long
size are
enough They're 2.1 inch, 650B.
So they'll fit on my howler?
Yes. I've got two sets in the shop.
I might have to have a set off here.
They weigh 1 kilo each. But I just figured last year on the coast to coast where it's overcast, where we ride up to your house, there's just icy patches everywhere. And I was just sick and tired of crashing. So yeah, I got some of them. Another road tip, which a lot of people, Mickey was asking me the other day, am I just having him on? But if you ride in winter and it's all in the wet and the rain, rub your tires. Now I'm going to put a disclaimer, obviously practice this before you do it at speed. But what I do is when I ride every few miles, I just put my hand on top of the tire while riding and then rub it.
So that any glass that's stuck in your tire will slash your hand.
I won't. Well, in 25 years of doing this, I haven't slashed my hand. I've had tiny cuts possibly. But essentially, what happens is glass doesn't actually puncture your tire immediately. So when it's wet, it sticks a bit more. But glass generally sticks to your tire. And then as you roll, it keeps rolling. It pushes in further and further and further until it punctures. So even in dry weather, if I ride through a patch of glass on the road, I would touch my tires because generally speaking, you would just rub it off.
So the principle of this piece of advice, I like. The application, no one should do, especially whilst riding.
Wear gloves. I've got an actual, I don't know, I've got a terrible story. This is back home in South Africa. We're riding towards, there's a place called Hartbeespoort. It's a motorway, which I don't think is legal to ride on, but we used to ride on it every Sunday at high speeds. And the one day we were going down at about 45, 50 kilometers an hour. And once again, went through glass. But instead of touching the top of my rear tire, I put my hand in between the seat tube and the tire. And I could feel this piece of glass with my finger. So I thought it wasn't coming out. So I used my mittens and I had my gloves. And I stuck my hand in, but I pushed a little bit too hard. My hand got lodged in between the tire and the down tube and locked up. I had a horrible crash with my hand stuck in the bike.
So thank you for giving us a reason why no one should actually listen to any of your advice.
Yeah, terrible advice. I mean, to be fair though, if I was to ride through a patch of glass, I would probably just pull over and check my tyres before. That's maybe a safe way
That's the sensible way of doing it.
That bit of advice.
And then lastly, something just I do is if you don't have a saddlebag underneath your saddle, if you've got most modern saddles have a cutout, tape the cutout closed. Because if you don't have mud guards on, that's just going to spray water. Wet chamois is not a nice thing to have.
Even with a smaller, like Saver or something, I think a bit gets through. Because I do the same thing. I tape the hole closed.
It just blocks it, yeah. So that's probably the last tip.
Nice.
Should I summarize those? So the first one was get a bike service. The second was fit mud guards. That can be just clip-on ones if needs be. Third one was keep your bike clean. The fourth one was get suitable tyres, and the fifth one was close the hole in your saddle. So whilst I was thinking about this topic, there's a couple of other things that I would like to add in which are less mechanic-y, I think. One of which would be I always pack away my winter kit. So at the beginning of the season, it's an opportunity to get it out, check it all over, see if all the seams are nice and intact, check the padding on your shorts and look for any missing bits, gloves, because otherwise you might get to the point you're going to go out and do the ride. It's at the coldest point of the winter and you go, oh God, I can't find my deep winter gloves. So just get it all ready and that means you're less likely to miss an opportunity to go out and ride your bike. Bar bags are always a great one. Or just luggage on your bag in general, because you can stuff jerseys in, extra pair of gloves, just gives you flexibility to add more kit, remove kit, food, spares, and less cumbersome in your pockets. Just don't overthink or don't think that luggage is a bad thing for a bike. I think it is very useful. You use a frame bag pretty much permanently.
For a spare jacket. Ours mostly because we do these chippy rides where we stop for fish and chips outside, and it's just something warm. But also, if you're on a club ride and somebody has a puncture, you could be stuck there for 10, 15 minutes while somebody's getting something fixed. Having a spare jacket just to keep you slightly warmer while you're standing still, not moving, is excellent. Dry socks. I carry a dry set of gloves as well, just in case it gets completely soaked and you can swap out. Another one is foil for your toes.
Do you do this one?
Yes, Adam does it as well quite a bit. So yes, toe caps. Loads of people buy toe caps to go over the outside of your shoe, and they work really well just to keep your toes slightly warmer. Another hack is just tinfoil. Put tinfoil inside your shoe because if you imagine that's the greatest wind blocker ever. No wind's getting through. That's quite good for springtime when you're still wearing your summer shoes that are usually very vented. Just put a bit of tinfoil.
I think a really good winter tool is have something to look forward to in the spring. And it makes it much easier to get through winter and it not be miserable and horrible. There have been years in the past where I've basically done nothing over winter, and then you get to spring and you're like, I'm so far off the mark that by the time I get fit, the summer will be over. So actually just having something to focus on early in spring, I find is a really, really good tool just to keep going. Whether that be an event or a holiday or just having a group of mates where you're kind of saying, on the 1st of May, we're going to go and do this 100K ride. Even if it's a local one, it doesn't have to be traveling. And it just gives you that little bit of motivation to keep going on and giving your mates a bit of banter so you actually keep motivated to keep doing things over winter.
I find it much easier to train in winter than summer. And it's a weird one, but I just think it's because there's a lot less stuff happening in winter.
Weirdly, I ride more with you in winter. I basically never ride with you in the summer.
There's no events that we have to go to. There's no like Sunday barbecues or things like that. It's cold and wet. So, and also people don't waste time in the winter as much in summer. In the summer, you can go on a ride, and we're out there for 8 hours riding for 2.5 of them because we're stopping around and
that's my
messing
favorite kind
about.
of ride.
When it's cold, you kind of like, let's get out there, get this ride done, and get home.
Yeah.
I feel I train much, much, much better in the winter. I started 3 weeks ago riding my bike again because it's cold now, which is bizarre, but yeah.
Do you have anything else to add?
I've got one to add. Woolly Bully socks. Defeat Woolly Bully socks are the best.
All the good stuff.
The best winter socks. I don't use dedicated winter boots. I wear Woolly Bullies, my normal shoes, which are not super vented, and then like a plasticky overshoe, and that's perfect for me.
I've got one last one, which you don't get much up here because it's just really cold. But if you're out there and you are a bit cold and you're struggling to get warm on a ride, if you can stop somewhere, get a bit of newspaper or a brown paper bag and stick that inside your jersey in the front. Because once again, it's just an extra wind stopper that's going to stop the chill getting to you.
That's like the
light body,
vintage
yeah.
one, that isn't it? That was
They used to use it for racing because
Yeah,
you can, and
on
also
the
at the top of
descents.
climbs, you climb up to the top and you want to descend, you need something to keep you warm on the way down. But back home in South Africa, we used to have where you start in the morning in winter, it could be 2 degrees, and then within an hour of riding, it's up to 18 degrees. So you don't want to dress mega warm, but a newspaper.
Well, I have just dribbled on myself, so we're now going to have me with dribble on for the rest of the podcast.
Never mind.